Okay, let's continue our examples from Chapter 2, looking at Problem 2. Similar circumstances to Problem 1, but now we're looking at acquiring only an 80% interest versus the full 100%. What this changes is the fact that we still have control, but there is a small non-controlling interest, which we're going to refer to as the NCI. So because the 80% still constitutes control, we have a single economic unit and we report that economic unit, but within the equity section of our consolidated balance sheet, we're going to acknowledge this 20% outside ownership of the subsidiary by recognizing a line for NCI. So in this case, there were 14,000 shares that were used for the acquisition at $40 market value. So the price the parent paid was $5.60. When we acquire less than 100%, we imply the full company value by taking the price paid divided by the ownership percentage. So we see here that the full implied value is $700,000. 20% of that implied value, or 140, belongs then to the NCI. Just like in Problem 1, we're going to then compare the price paid to the underlying equity of the subsidiary that was acquired. Because remember, we're working now on the equity side of the equation, not the net asset side like we did in Chapter 1. An additional item here is that we take the excess, or the book value, we take the book value times the percentage for each of the two parties, the parent and the NCI, to help us distribute the excess. So of our excess, 288 belongs to the parent, 2,000 belongs to the NCI. So these amounts become real important and will be part of our D entry. So we're going to split it out. Where in Problem 1 we took the full amount, here we're going to split it out between a parent and an NCI interest. What you'll notice, however, is that I'm still assigning the full fair market value adjustments. So between Chapter 1 and our problems now in Chapter 2, you should see that the price paid, whether goodwill or bargain position, the ownership acquired, whether 100 or 80%, does not impact the valuation given. Under the acquisition method, the full fair market value of any of the underlying items are recognized. In this scenario, then our total goodwill for what's left of the excess becomes $295, and we see that we have properly assigned the full excess. And these amounts, as well as the 288 and 72 I mentioned, will become the foundation of our D entry. But before we get to the D entry, we've been doing in order of the textbook because it's important to have some consistency and methodology so you don't miss anything. We'll do the EL entry first. Same accounts that we had last time, but as I'm typing, what you should notice is that I'm putting them in at the parent's ownership percentage because I can only eliminate the portion that as a consolidated group I own. The other 20% belongs to the NCI, and we'll see how that comes into existence when I complete the worksheet. So for now, in my EL entry, I'm just going to take my 80% and eliminate that against the investment, just like I did in the first example. Then in my D entry, remember these come directly from my DDE, my determination and distribution of excess schedule. So I'm going to assign the values to inventory, land, building, goodwill. I have a credit adjustment to equipment. Now, where do I get the amounts for the investment in the NCI portion? back to my DDE, just like I said earlier. So we're going to pick up these two amounts as our credits for elimination because 288 of the excess value belongs to the parent, 72 belongs to the NCI. So if I sum my entry, because it's always a good idea to make sure that I'm in balance, let's make sure that I posted everything correctly here, and I didn't. So let's see what we have as an issue here. It's in my formula. I skipped a line. There we go. So my entry does balance. My formula just didn't work. So I'm good to go ahead and proceed. Let's put our D entry in to the worksheet, because remember, since there isn't a consolidated general ledger, my worksheet becomes the equivalent, and I have to post to that worksheet on an annual basis and cumulatively, because this will not become part of a permanent account on either party's general ledger. It is strictly for reporting purposes. So I've got the basics in there. Now let's record the portion that belongs to the parent. And then I've got to do the NCI. The NCI, remember, is my outside third party. And I record that somewhere within the equity section because it's going to be part of my equity reporting on my final consolidated financial statements. So again, we'll put in the totals here to make sure we're tracking as we go. I encourage you to obviously keep track of just the basics as you go along, because it's real easy to make a mistake and then get off track. Okay, for the balance sheet then, I can do my auto sum feature, and the one adjustment, remember, that I need to make is for the investment account because I have multiple lines of adjustments and I only sum across on one line, so I need to manually go in and adjust that. So that gets us the balance sheet. Now what do I do with this subsidiary equity? Well, all that's left, remember, belongs to the NCI. So I'm going to sum it to my NCI column, and that then represents the piece of the subsidiary that is held outside of our economic unit. So to complete it out, I'll go ahead and zero out that column by transferring it over to the parent. So if I sum these columns, we'll see that our NCI column now is 0. Our equity section does not yet agree because we have not completed the equity of the parent. We need to carry across the equity of the parent, and when I complete that, now our trial balance is in balance and we have accounted for everything, and this would become the actual balance sheet on the consolidated financial statements. Hopefully this has given you a good information for Chapter 2 and a good jumping off point, because in Chapter 3 we're going to add more pieces to the puzzle by looking at the ongoing issues with the parent investment account as well as the passage of time.